Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the regular meeting of council for Monday, September 14th. I will call this meeting to order at 3 p.m. on the nose. First item of business, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that council adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of council for September 14th, 2020 as presented.
I'll make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor by consensus? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council adopt the minutes for the regular meeting of council from August 10th, 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Yeah. All in favor? Consensus? Oh, Dawn's got something?
Yes, I just wanted to make an amendment if possible. In motion 122-2020, it's an amendment after the amendment by Councillor Masterman was defeated. I made an amendment. It was carried, and it attributes the amendment to Councillor Masterman.
Okay, I gotta bring my notes up for
122-2020.
I don't have that printed out in front of me. Kara, do you got that?
You can make that change.
Yeah, I just didn't know whether you could make an amendment and then it'd be defeated and then make another amendment right after it. So if we correct the amendment maker, then it will be properly documented.
Right. I see what you're saying now, Dawn. I see it. Okay, you've got that, Kara?
Yes.
You can accept that as friendly amendment, Councillor Kinghorn? Thank you. All in favor as amended? Consensus? Carried. I'll ask for another motion from Councillor Cooey. The council adopt the minutes from the special meeting of council from August 10th, 2020.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Any comments, corrections? Dawn?
Yes. In the item under labor in the closed meeting, it says land item. It just has to be changed to labor.
Okay. Friendly amendment, Councillor Cooey.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. All in favor? Consensus. Motion is carried. Kara, have we received any public comments?
No, there are no public comments.
Thank you. We'll move into item number 5.1, being the public hearing for Bylaw 4577. This public hearing is held pursuant to the MGA RSA 2000, Chapter M26 and amendments thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to Bylaw 4577-2020 now open at 3:04 p.m.
So the purpose of Bylaw 4577-2020 is to provide for an alternate means of advertising bylaws, resolutions, meetings, public hearings, and other things as set out by the Municipal Government Act. The public hearing was advertised in the August 28th Town Crier and the September 4th High River Times as required by the Municipal Government Act.
Following rules of conduct will be followed during this public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point, shall be limited to 5 minutes in length. All speakers must state their name and address prior to presenting. The order of presentations will be alleged services, those supporting the bylaw, those opposing the bylaw, and any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council will ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification. There will be no debating the actual actual bylaw. Respect for staff, developers, council, and the public will be maintained at all times. So I'll hand it over to Ledge Services, Kara.
Perfect. So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today's public hearing is in relation to the public notification bylaw. So under the MGA, Council has the authority to pass an advertisement bylaw that provides methods for advertising proposed bylaws, resolutions, public hearings, meetings, and other things. The proposed bylaw seeks to integrate digital technology, such as the town's website and social media for advertising, in addition to continuing to use the town crier, so that notification of these items reaches a broader audience. Given that the town already utilizes its website and social media platforms, it's not anticipated that there would be any additional costs associated with this. The general implication is positive for the community in that individuals will be more aware of items that are coming to council and things such as public hearings so that they can provide input into the process. In addition, organizationally, this would be positive because it will standardize the process across the organization. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Kara. Any questions from council? I am seeing none. Anyone present who supports the bylaw? Kara, how do I know if there's anybody present that wants to
So
speak?
there's nobody that has actually registered to speak for or against this bylaw, but we still have to go through the process. So
Okay.
there's nothing further
Nobody.
required from council.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So nobody that supports. No one who opposes the bylaw who wishes to speak. Any other questions from council? Got anything? I have one question, Kara. How would, like, contracts that the town would be awarding for whatever, would this be part of that? Would
So I-
notification of opportunities be part of this?
Not that specifically. I think as we talked during the first reading, that would be covered under a procurement policy, and would be something that would be sorted out through that the tendering process with our communications department.
Perfect, thank you very much. No further questions. I hereby declare this public hearing relating to bylaw 4577/2020 closed at 3:07 p.m. Item number 6.1, racing pigeons. I understand. Who's speaking to this? Is Nasser here or?
Yes, so they're actually both here. So I'm going to admit them both right now. Just give me 1 second.
You?
They're now both in the meeting.
Hi, Nasser and Francisco. Do you have cameras that you can turn on, or make sure you unmute your computers for sure? There, Nasser's live now.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
Doing great.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you great. Yep, the floor is all yours, Nasser.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how many people do we have there because I don't see anybody except yourself. My name is Nasser Fikiri. I'm the president of Calgary Racing Pigeon Club for the past 5 years here, and I've been racing in Calgary through our Racing Pigeon Club for about 21 years now. And I've joined when I was young with my young family when I was in Calgary, but right now I reside in Chestermere, where we had to sit down with the council, just like what we're doing right now, and go through what is about this hobby and about racing pigeon. So without further ado, if there is anything else that I need to answer first, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of background about the history of the racing pigeons and the history of our club, and how this hobby contains certain things that we as pigeon owners or pigeon flyers or fanciers were called, that we look after all these pigeons and what we go through, if I may. Should I carry on, sir?
Carry on. Yeah, you go right ahead, Nasser.
Awesome. Well, thank you. A short history about racing pigeon. Modern pigeon racing had its beginning in early 1800s in Belgium. However, man has long used pigeons as pets, as a source of food, and as a messenger carriers, possibly as far back in the times of 5,000 years ago. Now, men began taming pigeons around 8,000 years ago. The pigeon, a seed eater, would have been relatively easy to domesticate. Certainly, as man began to grow grains, the pigeons, a species that would have naturally gravitated around human settlement and farms. At the height of the Moorish Empire, the Arabs and the pigeons used pigeons as messengers. In the Dark Ages and medieval times, from Baghdad in the Middle East to Barbary Coast in North Africa, Arabs used carrier pigeons. Genghis Khan also reputedly used pigeons as his empire grew. Carrier pigeons were a major component in the expansion of the Industrial Revolution. Reuters news agency began with the homing pigeons. Many European postal systems, they used homing pigeon as to this day, basically, that's what they've used. Pigeon racing in Belgium probably began with the use of Persian messenger pigeons as a foundation of stock, crossed with the local pigeons. The modern racing homers gradually developed into what we know it today. The development continues as we go on today. The first long distance pigeon race was in Belgium in 1818. In 1820, a race was flown from Paris to Liège, and in 1823 from London to Antwerp. By 1870, there was 150 racing societies in Belgium and over 10,000 lofts. Neighboring Holland became fascinated with the hobby and wholeheartedly joined in. After 1875, the hobby of pigeon racing gained popularity in England. Today, there are approximately 90,000 lofts in both Belgium and Holland, while there are some 100,000 lofts in England. Now, I'll give you a little background about Calgary Racing Pigeon Club itself. We were officially registered in 1906. However, early records show as early as 1904. Calgary Racing Pigeon Club promotes the sport of long distance races through club activities and daily demonstration at the Calgary Stampede. The sport of pigeon racing has increased in Canada, with pigeon clubs and ladies auxiliary popping up in the cities and towns. The Canadian Racing Pigeon Union, which is in Toronto, is an organization that is dedicated to the growth and preservation and support of racing pigeon in Canada. The Canadian Pigeon Union International Magazine is a monthly publication dedicated to the sport of racing pigeon. In Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, we average about 50 members in a given year. Special events that we hold, we are proud to be involved through some events, including releasing of pigeons during the opening ceremonies of 1988 Winter Olympics, 1994 WCB National Conference, official opening of the Chinese Cultural Center, and official opening of Fort Calgary. We were also a host of 2004 Canadian Racing Pigeon Union Convention, which brought approximately 300 delegates from across Canada. We're very active in the community by making annual donations to charities, Children's Hospital, Alberta Cancer Society, and Mustard Seed. We have had fundraisers for various natural disasters which have occurred in the past. I'll give you a short rundown how we keep our pigeons. Our pigeon coops, or we call them pigeon loft, that is located in our backyard. The cleaning of the loft itself happens 2 times per day during racing season and once or twice per week in winter seasons. Pigeon lofts could cost anywhere from $1,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on one's space and need. Our pigeon dropping, so-called pigeon poop, is a commodity. They are in high demand between the farmers, families, and friends. The best fertilizer ever. Nothing goes to waste. In olden days, governments used security guards to protect where a pigeon pooped. Pigeon poop contains high level of nitrate and ammonia. As far as the racing is concerned, our racing season starts May and finishes in end of September. During the race season, birds are trained once or twice per day with strict supervision, whether training around the loft or road training. they are called into the loft as soon as they land. It's amazing and so automatic how they would not waste time outside and enter to their loft, which their coop or whatever we've made for them as far as their home is concerned. This is how they are trained on a daily basis for the races that they get once a week. And they race from 100 to 800 kilometers on a weekly basis. Our racers are known among the hobbyists as horse races of the skies. They can travel up to speeds of 60 to 70 miles per hour. On an average, 50 miles per hour. They like to stay, they don't like to stay out overnight, but sometimes when it's a hard race, they will home the following day. In 2019, this fastest pigeon was bought by a Chinese fancier for a price of $1.4 million by the name of Armando. And that shocks us. All our pigeons are registered with our union, which is called the Canadian Union, and they have a band registered to every individual. And this is for identification reasons, just like our SIN numbers. So when they get lost, people will find it or will go and collect our pigeons. Then when they're ready to race, they get an electronic band registered to them as well for clocking purposes. As far as their feed, vitamins, minerals, and vaccinations are concerned, our birds feed better than us. My wife tells me all the time, actually. Over 22 different kinds of grain, and they're special. They have special treat like red Spanish peanut. That's their. You have red Spanish peanut in your hand, they'll come and take it off your hand and give you a kiss. Just like our dogs and cats, they have their favorite treats. Most of their minerals and vitamins come from Europe. Our birds get vaccinated for paramoxin and paratyphoid disease on a yearly basis. If need be, they would get a visit from a veterinary also. As far as their service is concerned, due to their homing ability, speed, and altitude, pigeons were often used in military messenger carrying messages during World War I, World War II. And 32 of these such pigeons were presented with Dickens Medal Award. The Dickens Award was given in 1943 in the United Kingdom by Maria Dickens to honor the work of animals during the World War I and World War II. A carrier pigeon's job was dangerous. Nearby enemy soldiers often tried to shoot down pigeons, knowing that released birds were carrying important messages. Some of these pigeons became quite famous among the infantrymen they worked for. One pigeon named the Mocker flew 52 missions before he was wounded. Another named Cher Emmy lost her foot and one eye, but her message got through, saving a large group of surrounded American infantrymen. G.I. Joe flew 20 miles in as many minutes, delivering a message, which is credited saving over hundreds of lives served with the United States Army. Modern services. Today in Banff, Alberta, racing pigeons are used to deliver memory sticks from place to place, as well as in the middle of oil refineries. They are used for same purpose. These amazing birds are purchased from high amount of money in order to breed and use them for different purposes. One-off races around the world, famous people that is involved into the sport. I'll give you a little bit of that. Testing and breeding speed. They're tested for their breeding and speed and navigation skills. To name a few one-off races or big releases, Barcelona International Race, over 150,000 pigeons are released from all around Europe. This is once a year. Big race. South Africa, $1 million race. Canary Island, $1 million race, to name a few one-off races. And there's quite a few Canadian and Canada and US one-off races that people do enter, for the hobbyists enter to see their birds compete to the fullest. Our Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, is famous for her pet pigeon. The monarch owns over 200 pigeons, which she houses in luxury loft at her country state's Sandringham House in Norfolk, England. Queen Elizabeth II is president of many pigeon societies around England. Mike Tyson keeps pigeons and claims that the first thing he ever loved was pigeon. Ricky Martin isn't on stage or judging on voice. He likes to race pigeons. Miley Cyrus has a soft animal loving side, and pigeons are her favorite. Miranda Kerr hopes that her kid she's so fascinated with these pigeons that would take after her mom. Elvis' famous leg shake could have been created by watching a pigeon dance. The king loved pigeons. Clint Eastwood used to raise homing pigeons. He said pigeons help him relax. So in conclusion, the notion that pigeons are stupid couldn't be further from truth. These animals have been the subject of countless scientific studies over the past few decades that are widely considered to be among the smartest creatures on Earth. For example, pigeons can be taught to perform complex actions and remember images for several years. They can even recognize their own image. Now, that is something cats, dogs, and even infant humans generally can't do. I understand there are wild pigeons, all sorts of other birds around us, hawks, sparrows, magpies, crows, owls, that make our neighbors concerned about them making a mess, but our pigeons get the wrong end of the stick. When our neighbors see a flock of pigeons during the exercise, they think that these are the ones pooping and making the mess. They're homing racing pigeons, whereas the culprits are already gone and they didn't see. We keep our birds clean, captive, trained, and healthy. These athletes, they race from 100 kilometers to 800 kilometers per week, and they have no time to sit around and go roof to roof and party. The hobby was introduced to the United States in the 19th century. It also gained a foothold in the parts of France. It is now becoming popular in Japan, Taiwan, Canada, Australia, South Africa, mainland China. There are flyers in India, Argentina, and Hungary. However, the birthplace of the sport, as we know, it was Belgium, remains the center of the fancy. At the present time, there are approximately 20,000 registered racing pigeon lofts in North America. In the past 5 years, interest in pigeon racing in this country has been growing. It is thought that this is mainly the popularity and escalating number of young bird futurities. This hobby is developed into a wholesome backyard sport in which the entire family can participate. The tendency towards enterprise and competition is nicely met by this trend in the hobby. It is probably because pigeons are so common that people don't give them their due. But pigeons are actually quite smart and will adapt it to their environment. So next time you find yourself face to face with a flock of pigeons, take a moment to appreciate these beautiful birds. They're among the most interesting and misunderstood creatures in the world. Well, I thank you very much for listening to this, all the babbling that I did. So hopefully I gave you some background about the racing pigeon, and I'm all yours now.
Well done. Thanks,
Well,
Nasser.
thank you. Yeah, I just want to also show you, sorry, these, I don't know if you can see, these are all my awards over the years that I've been flying with Calgary Racing Pigeon Club. You see all these plaques?
Yeah, we can't see your camera.
Oh, you can't see the camera?
Camera isn't activated, so.
Oh, I'm surprised. Why is that?
That's fine. You can work on that while we,
Oh.
there you are. Oh, now I can see them.
All right. Okay,
Yeah,
so
thank
I
you.
just wanted to show you, yeah, these are all the, can you see all these awards?
Oh, yeah.
These plaques. So we also hold once a year, we have our annual gala. And this gala contains with all, we have about 120 people coming to, with their kids and grandkids, family getting together, and special awards is special thanks to people. So it's an organized sport.
Nice. So the reason why we're here today is, of course, the animal control bylaw that we've put into place that prohibits the pigeons, which I appreciate you guys coming and educating us a little bit more on where we're at. So, and I'll ask you a couple of questions on my side of looking at this. Primarily, when we were doing that bylaw, I was concerned more about the, a neighborhood nuisance You talked a lot about the pigeon poop and everything else. And we had a couple of people that came and said, yeah, they poop all over my house and my deck and everything else, right? So that would be my number one question, Nasser, is, how do you control that? How do you deal with that? Like,
Yeah, that's
how could we regulate something like that?
that's a very, very good question, and it's a valid question. We see it, like I have pigeons, and my loft is 1,440 square feet. I live in Chestermere, and it's almost like a palace. And as far as the pigeon poop is concerned, what they see, as I mentioned earlier in my comments or the summary that I was given, they think it's the homing pigeons, because we cannot let these birds out all the time. If they're loose, and they become a nuisance to neighbors and to themselves in a way also, because then we cannot raise these pigeons. These
Right.
pigeons are, their time is so important and sensitive. So when they come from the race or even training, right away, that's the only thing they know is enter in the loft and they can't get out. If they're trained supervised and under strict supervision, like twice a day when it's racing season. Wintertime, we don't even let them out. Once in a while when the weather is nice, because they have to go through a good molt. We need them for the following year because they
Right.
got to have good feathering. Now, what has happened as far as even in Calgary, because we've got a great relationship we just talked to Strathmore and we changed their bylaw. And also, when I came to Chestermere, we were allowed to keep only one bird. And when we went through with all the information that we've given them and what we do as pigeon keeping, and then in their bylaw they told me that you can keep as many as you want. But I said, listen, I don't need too many, maybe up to 200, because I've got a big place here, a couple acres. And then they said, well, you could keep up to 750, but that's too many. We don't keep that many pigeons, right? So these pigeons are, when I say that as far as their vaccination is concerned, they get vaccinated twice a year. The big money is spent on these birds to keep them, just like our dogs and cats. And feeding is another important thing. When people see those things, if they see a wild pigeon or a magpie, sometimes it's hard even for them to tell, like, what was it? Right away, they see the neighbor's pigeons when they're training. They probably think it's the neighbor's pigeons. But we also have our own bylaw within the club that we control our own flyers. If something like that, because they're all registered with the CU, with the Canadian Union, as well as, or maybe AU, the American Union, as well as us as a club member. So we govern them, we look after them. Like if we hear something from anybody, it's happened in the past that we've let go of our members because they didn't listen and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So there are a lot of people probably keeping pigeons, but if they belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, we make sure that they abide by the laws and the bylaws that we've got also. And as far as what is happening to the neighborhood, sometimes it's sad to see. Sometimes people don't like someone, or they pick on any issues like that.
So you just brought up an interesting point. So there's a difference between a racing club pigeon and just somebody that has a pigeon.
Exactly.
You guys have your own bylaws, your own regulation, and your own values as to how you take care of these birds.
For sure. And at the same time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Francesco, and we've got about 8 or 9 members in High River. They've been with us since 2016. So they've been a good outstanding members with us. And we're very happy to, to come out and speak on their behalf, on the behalf of the hobby at the same time. So I just don't understand. I don't know, like, if there is any issues, you would be getting complaints from all over the place, right? And from not just Francesco. I have a feeling it's to do with maybe they need to have a barbecue and, hug each other and introduce to the sport. I guess maybe they've just started in the wrong foot. I don't know. So that's something that's got to be discussed. Yes.
Well, and like myself, just ignorance to the whole. I don't know anything about it, right? So, like you say, just learning about it, right? How do you tell? Like, if you see pigeons flying, how do you tell whether it's a racing pigeon or you can't see the band on their leg that you guys have?
Yeah. All our pigeons, all the people that belong to, like, our members, belong to Canadian Racing Pigeon Union or Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, they all have a birthmark, which is a band, a plastic band that won't come off their leg unless someone cuts it on the leg. And then that could be, let's say, also sometimes we get birds from Vancouver or Edmonton that will stray in High River, for example. I'm just going to give you that as an example. And then it's reported to us, and we find the owner, because everybody's registered with the big union, the Canadian Union. And then so if we can't find it locally, we'll reach out there, and then we'll find the owner and make sure that they get their bird. So that's been taken care of that way. Now, as far as our pigeons are concerned, they're all registered on a yearly basis. Let's say when the babies are born, they get banded. And these bands are registered to individuals and the members. And then we can track them down through our club, who it belongs to. And also the CU can track them down. So any other pigeons, I've seen also lots of, because we've got a Facebook page, we've got a website, and we reach out to people who want to make sure we get to the problem first, right? If there's any issues or there's a bird falling in somebody's, like front door or front garage, we go and pick it up. Like sometimes we run into a lot of different fanciers, because there's a lot of different type of pigeons and different kind of clubs out there too. Fancy Pigeon Club is one. Thumbler is another one. These pigeons, they thumble when they're flying, and high flyer is another one. So we run into quite a few of these different clubs that do have pigeons, but ours are registered. So if mine gets lost and you find it, then you phone me, hey, because my phone number is on it. And then you say, hey, I got your pigeon, Nasser. I say, where are you located, sir? I'll find out the address. And if I can't get there, somebody else is going to get there, whoever's close, to pick up our birds. So we look after those things, and they're very easily identified by the band number. And then when they get trained, they get an electronic band on them, so which is registered to a computer. So when the birds come from the race, they go over a pad, just like when you're going shopping and you're buying, let's say, a can of Coke or maybe some vegetables, and they scan it, right? So when these guys come from the race from 800 kilometers, then they've flown 17 hours or 15 hours on the wing without stopping, they would go over that scanner and they will beep. When that beep comes, and then you check the clock and say, okay, this was a hen or a cock, or what band number, or from what race, and it belonged to you.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Any questions from council?
Well, I'd like to thank you all, first of all. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to come to you guys, and because it got to a point that Francesco, in his case, he's got also a disabled son. I don't know if you guys were aware of it. And his disabled son was, these birds are also for, they're used for therapeutic reasons, and also some relaxations. And believe it or not, it works, especially people with Alzheimer's and different kind of diseases. And they would come and sit in front of the flock, and they perform. They're very, very intelligent birds. So he has developed also a very close bond with all these pigeons, and he's wheelchair ridden. Nice. And I think we've spoken to, I came out and I spoke to the bylaw officer, the chief bylaw officer, Chris, if I'm not making a mistake. And, we run it that way too, that look, the kid is really involved with the homing pigeon, and he loves these birds, and he's so attached to it, just like a cat and a dog that we love, right?
For sure.
I got three shepherds myself, so I know what they're like. So we've got that issue, and the main thing is just to educate the public. And we have, like our own things. We go to schools, educate, the teachers as well as the students, give them a love for something outdoor instead of all the computers, how we're involved now. Our kids are involved with computer, nothing outdoorsy. And also it's good for the hobbyists, it's a backyard hobby that keeps us from going to the bars, and then keeping the family happy.
Okay, thanks. I'll got 3 counselors with questions for you. So I'll start with Councillor McMillan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Nasser and Francisco, for attending our meeting. It's very informative. And I want to thank Francisco for taking such great effort, and I really admire the proper protocol that you are fighting for this, Francisco, because I really am sad that you weren't at the public hearing, because I feel now, without having full information, that I would have changed my vote definitely. I think the emotional therapy component is huge, but it's also the fact that after reading all of the publications that were brought forward to us, as well as having Nasser's presentation, I have learned so much. So, and also when I was reading our public engagement report for our committee of the whole meeting, the public, and when asked about pigeons, just the people who answered the survey, 30% were in favor and 18% were unsure. And there were 48% against. Well, in my mind, that's a very even, because, you know, if you include the unsure with the in favor, you've got 48% to 48%. So I truly would like to revisit this. And as council, of course, we'll have to discuss that. But I just really admire your fortitude, because you believe in this and you've done all of the proper policies about how to do it. You haven't just been bad-mouthing council about making a poor decision. And I know with people's work schedules, and Francisco, in your emails to me, you had mentioned about how your wife and you both work. And I know it's very difficult to attend public hearings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. And this is what's beautiful about this online format too. And I appreciate that you've probably taken time off of work, and Nasser as well. But also the fact that you reached out to our CAO, like, I just can't help but commend you. And like I said, I am truly hoping that we can revisit this, because we're human. We make decisions based on the information that's presented to us. But I don't feel that we have the full information, because to my recollection, I based my vote on one person who attended the meeting who said that she didn't like pigeon poop on her yard and her car. And I totally get it. I understand that. But with greater information about the racing component, I really would like to revisit this. So sorry that I'm babbling, but I commend both of you for taking the time. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Carol. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks again for joining us and bringing this information forward. In other municipalities, for example, Chestermere, I believe that the bylaw states they have to be a member in good standing of a racing club. Do you have to get a license, a yearly license from Chestermere? I guess what I'm trying to do is, how do we delineate from the person involved in the racing club versus someone who's not? Because I believe that maybe the problematic yard was one that probably isn't part of the racing community, and unfortunately have marred and jaded our decision because of the mess and the frustrations of that neighbor. So I'm just curious if in those other communities, if there's a licensing process, or if it's complaint driven, or how those communities are handling those complaints.
Oh,
Answer
right.
that, and then I just have one more question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. And that's a very good question. And as far as the membership is concerned, so as I say, on a yearly basis, we have about 50 members. And there was a time that Calgary Racing Pigeon Club used to have 225 members, and 60 were youth. And so there's a membership given. The list is always updated on our Calgary Racing Pigeon website. And if you go calgaryracingpigeonclub.ca, you'll see all the race results from the years past, and also the membership list. So I think that should be something that even what council, I don't know how it's going to be probably managed, but they could visit or get a list of people that belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon Club from us. Like, we can do that, no problem. We can send a list of yearly basis, like who is an active member with the Calgary Racing Pigeon Club. If it is to do only with Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, as I mentioned, there's quite a few different clubs out there, like High Flyer Club, Thunderbird Club, roller club. So I don't know what their situation is like, but as far as our end is concerned, we can look after that and help you guys with that. Like send us an email. We'll send you a list of who they are and where they, what their addresses are and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just think we really need to look at, if we reconsider this, how we manage who's a club member, who's not, and who's allowed and who's not. Just another question. You talk about the value of the waste. How, what happens there? You said it's valuable. So what does someone like Francisco do with his waste?
Right. As I was mentioning, because it's got the high level of nitrate and ammonia in it, you can use it as a fertilizer. Most of these wastes are grabbed by the farmers. So people come in, we go and give it to the farmers. So once they know where we are, they'll come in. And most of the poop that we pick up from these pigeons, they're not enough, even for the family and the friends that they know. So it's distributed between the family and friends. And it was and need be farmers, and they'll use it. And then, as I say, in the olden days, they used to use it for making bombs. That's what because the high nitrate level, right? And so it's if you look at the components, like if you break down the fertilizer itself, it's the same stuff that the pigeon poop's got.
Okay, great, thank you.
And furthermore, I guess when we were talking about membership, all the members that do belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, they'll get a yearly pass almost, and then they can have like an invoice saying that I belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon Club, and it's dated as the year.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Francisco and Nasser, for your presentation and for being here today and teaching me more about racing pigeons than I ever thought I'd ever learned in my entire life. But it's really, really interesting, and I appreciate your knowledge and your passion. I've got a couple of questions, and you may or may not want to answer them, but it's up to you. I'm wondering how many members you have in High River and how many total birds would be in High River.
We've got probably about, if I'm not making a mistake, about 8-9 members. And as far as the birds are concerned, they've got pretty small lofts, probably anywhere from 20 to 30 birds, maybe.
20 to 30 birds each or total?
Per loft.
Oh, okay.
Per coop. And these coops, as I said, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I have that right. So 20 to 30 birds for each of those members, for each coop. Loft, right?
Per coop, yeah.
Yes, okay. Again, I'm like the mayor, I'm trying to differentiate between racing birds and some of the other pigeons that we might see. Would there be a reason for anybody to have pigeons in High River domestically unless they were racing pigeons?
Yes, people do keep pigeons without being a member of Calgary Racing Pigeon Club. As I say, they could be different. Like for you, let's say, if I didn't know pigeons, if I see any type of pigeon, I'd say pigeon, right? I wouldn't say this is a racing homer, that's a high flyer, that's a fancy pigeon, that's a tumbler, this is a this and that, right? So some people might have pigeons but don't belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon or any other club. They just keep it as a hobby.
Right.
Just like keeping cats and dogs, but fortunately we have to get licenses for our cats and dogs. When some places you see people have them, but they don't register them, right?
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Again, thank you for your presentation, and I too am learning lots about pigeons. I took it on myself a little bit to go for a drive over in the neighborhood where we seem to be getting most of the complaints. And my question for you is, does the club have, I would call it density limits to how many pigeons or how many coops should be in a given area? Because it appears to me over there that there's a large number of coops in a very small geographic area. Is there a recommendation for density limits?
As far as the density is concerned, no, sir, because it's I don't know how to put it. It's usually and not likely to have like so many flyers in one area. Like within the size of Calgary, in one neighborhood, let's say in the Northeast, for example, I'll give you, there's only probably one pigeon flyer and the whole community of Northeast. So maybe it's to do with, I don't know if they all belong to Calgary Racing Pigeon Club or not. The ones that you've maybe driven to, I don't know exactly where. I've never been. I've been to High River, but I've never been to their areas of where exactly these coops are located. But it's possible that they could be by a chance neighbors. I don't know.
I look forward to getting that list from you, and then we can do some comparisons. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Kathy, you've got your hand up still. Do you want to come back to you? Okay, Councillor Cooley.
Yeah. Sorry, I just put it back up again. Just one quick question. Any of those municipalities that have this in the bylaw, do they limit the number?
Sorry, is this question for me?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, Nasser.
Sorry.
Do any of the communities that have these bylaws, have they set a limit to the number of birds in the loft?
Yes,
Or enough?
depending on how big the loft is, right? And my scenario is a little bit different. And then others, they usually have a smaller coop or maybe a couple of coops. So what happens is usually summertime, racing season time, coming from February, the breeding starts. And they breed the young ones for the season of young bird races, which ends in September. Usually the density as far as the population of pigeons are concerned with these club members, they've got more pigeons during this season between, let's say, March and September, just because they're breeding the young ones. But at the end of the season, the numbers are always drawn down to minimum. So usually I'd say 50 birds, 50 flying, if they have. Depends on the size of the coop. And I tell you something, that these pigeons are very, very particular. They're too smart. When I say when they're too smart, it is very true. If they've got a smaller coop, these pigeons would not stay there. They take off and they'll be gone. So because they want their space. And so they can, if they don't limit their birds, the environment will limit for them.
Interesting, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I've got a quick question for Francisco. I was wondering how many pigeons that you have and whether you've ever received any complaints from any of your neighbors.
Thank you for that, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, right now, I have only 2 babies left because I just bred this season for 23 babies from my breeders. I have only 6 breeders of 6 pair of breeders, and I bred only 23 babies, and I send 10 babies to one loop race to Ontario. Right now, I have an entry there for the 2 big loop, 1 race. 1 loop races in Ontario. I have 2 entries in there. And then the rest was registered in the club. And so far, we have already 5 weeks races. And then, unfortunately, some of my babies did not come home. I don't know what happened. And then I have only 2 left right now. And last season, I have only 3 yearlings bird left too. So I have only 5 racers as of now. So, and then we have only 2 weeks left for this season races. I don't know if they can survive these 2 weeks so left.
Have you received any complaints from your neighbors about the pigeons?
Actually, personally, there's no complaint on me, but just the bylaw sent me an information about that. And there's one neighborhood, I think, or one person complained. But I was asked the peace officer about what's the complaint, because I don't remember my birds, my babies stand by outside my even in my roof. They're not allowed to stand by, because sometimes I train them once a day. Mostly I train them afternoon after my work. I send them to 30 kilometers from my house, and then when they arrive, they just go right away inside their loop. And then that's why I wonder where they can see my bird stand by, and I don't know where they can see my bird. But
Thank you.
I have only one complaint so far, yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Francesco. Okay, thanks, Nasser, as well for your presentation. We will revisit this by the sounds of the will of council, that we'll put this back to Chris to bring this back at a future meeting for us, or maybe committee of the whole or something, to get the conversation going as to, not prohibiting, but regulating how this is going, because if it is working in other communities, there's no reason why it can't work here with the right rules in place, and getting rid of the rogue pigeons that might be causing the ruckus.
That's
Good
true.
racers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and it is misunderstood. This hobby is misunderstood, and people don't have the right information. Obviously, not everybody's interested in pigeons. It's same as dogs and cats, right? So when you want something, there's a lot of information out there, and these pigeons have been good to humans, and they're good pets, and people name them. People have their favorites. They've got beautiful coloring. They're just personable, just like everything else. It's just a matter of who's got the niche for it, right? So if you love pigeons, you would know about pigeons. But as I say, racing pigeons have been misunderstood, but they're very, very intelligent. When I say, like, there was a bird that was sold for $1.4 million, and it was in 2019. It was sold to a Chinese businessman in China. And then they're so intelligent with all these, given circumstances as far as the weather in their front, when they're released, whether it's a storm, whether it's wind, whether it's rain or whatever, they'll fly right through it to come home. Love for you and your loft.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Very well done. And I agree with Councillor McMillan. I'm thankful for the way that you guys have handled this and bringing it back and opening up our eyes and ears over it. You've done an excellent job and a classy way of doing it. So thank you.
I appreciate for your time, sir, and for all the councillors. And if there is any way that we can do anything, like just you've got my email address as far as the information is concerned, we'd love to work with you guys and come up with something that way everybody can enjoy their pets.
Awesome. Thanks, Nasser. Thanks, Francisco.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Take care,
Appreciate
guys.
it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 7.1, which is just the strategic priorities chart sitting there for information. Is there any questions for Chris quickly on that? I don't see any, so we'll move on to item 8.1, renewal funding. Who's speaking to that one? Thomas?
I am.
Riley is.
So the renewal funding. This is just basically a recap of what we heard from council when we brought this previously on June 8th, where we had a discussion around the projects, what council's priorities were. We took that back, prioritized the projects as such. We also had a conversation with environment to see how that fit with the different funding sources that we have, and then put it all back together into a, hi Craig. Craig's sneaking in my office. Now I'm right off my game here. Thanks, Craig.
It's an opportunity you can't give up.
So that's where the list came from. We took council's priorities, we took the environment's constraints, we took what we heard and then put the list together. I have listed on the 3 grants approximate numbers in terms of how much is left in each fund. The one not listed is the LTR or SAFRP grant, as that one's currently over committed. These numbers are approximations as they do change given where we are in other projects with surpluses rolling over or with interest or change orders and whatnot. So it does change day to day, but those are fairly close. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, I guess. Tom's with me too, in case there's questions I can't answer.
Any questions from council on this? The only one I had, I guess for Tom probably, was this Mercer property stuff. Number 7 would say supply and install vegetation. You and I know what that thing's been looked at, so I don't know if vegetation would cut it, but I'm not going to get into the actual projects themselves. It's more about whether any of these should come off. Or...
So the one thing I would say with that, Craig, is that the AEP grant, in terms of, I mean, we're sitting at 1.9 million, and so chances of getting down to all the way down to number 7 on that list might be a challenge.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, we also have a tree replacement program that is funded on LTR. So from a, like if we were doing vegetation, trees might be an easy solution, especially when you look at, if you go, you set yourself back from the bank 5 meters or so, and then you're avoiding all the Water Act approvals and whatnot. So there may be some options there in terms of still getting that project done. With a conventional riprap kind of approach, your bank will be, I guess you'd probably lose less because the trees would have to be set back. But on the flip side, it's going to be more expensive as well, and you'll have approvals and whatnot. So I guess there's pros and cons of going it either way is what I'm trying to say. There's no clear, easy way, but there is, if it was a tree kind of plan with willows and poplars and such, there may be an option to do it under existing funding within LTR.
I just the way that river hits that bank coming into a 90-degree corner there, I just don't know that that the vegetation will be wiped out before it even gets established. Like it's taken 3 meters a year, even this year. It took 3 meters at one point and at least a meter all the way along there. So it chews away at that sucker, and it's tearing down 100-year-old cottonwoods, no matter the other stuff. So just something to keep in mind. I mean, those kinds of things with it. So council questions, go to Council Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor. Riley, can you look at number 8, scope change to support lower Highwood flood risk mitigation? Can you describe to me what that is?
So basically, if there's any leftover money, it would go to the county to support their lower Highwood plan.
Okay.
So the county has done an investigation of anything downstream of High River and to see the impacts on landowners. And they do have a plan associated with, and Tom can correct me, I think there's some easement purchases and whatnot downstream in terms of what that might look like. And that program currently lacks funding. And so if there was excess funding within this grant, that would be one option we could repurpose it and help the county with that.
And I'll speak to that as well, Jamie. So this has been brought up into our IMC meetings, pretty much every meeting for the last 2 years, but the counties, well, the Alberta government pulled out from underneath the county all their funding for the rest of the buyouts that they had been promised, and basically what they've said is go back to High River. They've got lots of money, but that's not quite the case. But you know, we've been very clear. I have been very clear that yeah, if we're done what we need to do for our flood mitigation, we've got money left over, and it can be reallocated to help those people downstream on the Highwood. Then absolutely, but they also know that priority one is making sure that we get this town protected. That's what the money's for, first and foremost.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted a little clarification on that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's where it's at.
Just to add to that, the FREC funding is fairly limited in terms of what we can use. So there's a chance that number 4 may actually happen on that one, which is the same in terms of funding, sending funding to the county.
Right. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Riley, just you talked about the SAFRP, the last one, and that it's actually already overextended or overspended. Where will those funds come from?
Those funds will come from the projects themselves. So the 4 projects we listed have not yet started, but they are approved by Environmental Ready in terms of being valid for the grant. So what would happen is we would just do the projects in order, and eventually we would run out of money and stop. And so what that would look like is probably number 4, which we've already taken some funding from to fund other projects, wouldn't happen. Which is okay, because priority 1 is actually the same project, just with a different scope. One's basically redo the surface, and one's bringing the road to a full urban standard. An urban standard is not required at this point. We don't need any repeats of 5th Ave, right, Craig? 5th Street. And so we'd probably look at number 1. There is some organics likely underneath there, the way that thing blows out every year. It does take a lot of load from the water plant as well. So when they're hauling water down that road, it does take a beating as well. So we may look at upgrading the structure, but it wouldn't be to a full urban. It would be a much, it'd be like a country road, except maybe with a beefed up structure to handle the traffic we're seeing.
Awesome. Thank you, Riley.
Councillor Masterman.
Sorry, Craig, or Mayor Snodgrass, I lowered my hand. I'm good.
Awesome. Okay, let me get back to my I'll ask for a motion from Councillor McMillan that Council approve the prioritization of the renewal surplus funding projects as recommended in attachment 1 of this report, and the Council direct administration to provide AEP with the approved I'm struggling with that word today, prioritization list. Councillor McMillan.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor by consensus? Carried. MSP project approval.
Me again.
Right.
And so the province recent announcement in terms of funding has given us approximately 1.6 million through the municipal stimulus program. Upon that announcement, we looked at all the projects and all the work we had to do that met the conditions of the funding. And the curling slab, the small ice slab, and the large arena slab were the ones that stuck out as being the best fit. We conducted inspection in March 2020. They were not scheduled for construction next year. And so they were a good fit for the grant. So it is required that the council give us approval to move forward on this grant. There is some options in terms of what we do. The small arena and the curling rink must be done together because they are on the same chiller and cooling circuit, and has a price tag of approximately 1.7 million, which is slightly over the grant. The large arena is approximately additional 1.4. If there are budgetary issues, we can definitely reduce that scope to just doing one or the other. At this point, what we're proposing is that they be done together to try and get some efficiencies in terms of design and tendering, and getting that ready to go. There will be impact on user groups because we do have to do this next summer. So we are looking at what that might be. The total extent we won't know until we get designed and tendered. And so next steps would be, provided council approves this, we would apply for the grant. Upon receiving the grant, we would then do detailed design, nail down our estimates a little bit more accurate than what's currently in the assessments, come back to council for a budget request, and then move forward on the projects. And then I think that's about it. I'd be happy to answer questions. Hopefully that made sense.
Yep. So the grant total is 1.6, but the actual project will be, whether we go large arena or just the curling surface and the small ice, will be over, and the actual price tag will be more than that. But that'll be a budget discussion as to whether we're willing to put that extra money to it, right?
That is correct. And this is, we don't even have an engineer on board for this. That's something we'll have to RFP out and find out, because it is a fairly specialized thing. We are concerned what we're going to find under the slabs, and we don't know if we can limit that risk through the design process without cutting holes in the slab. So that's something we're going to have to figure out, which is one of the reasons why we weren't super comfortable with the estimates as well. Because you'll notice we're not asking for the money up front, and that's part of the reason is we'd like some more time with the engineer, get an engineer on board and actually spend a little more time to dial in the estimates a bit more accurately.
Yeah. So the large arena, like, I get what you're saying about economies of scale, and if we can fit that one in, well, you save money throughout the whole process a little bit, but you also spend way more money too that we don't really have. So the priority being the curling club and the small rink, I would say that those are the top priority, and let's do what we need to do. I think opening up that large arena is just going to create a cluster that we'll never get out of and could kill the whole thing in my mind. So Councillor Masterman. Sorry, that wasn't, that was just my opinion on the large arena. I don't know. I'd rather just focus on what we can do and move on. But so, Councillor Masterman.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So I just want to make sure this is clear in my head. So retrofitting all three slabs will buy us about 50 years by the looks of it, right? I mean,
that's correct. So when we had the assessment done and we were talking to the firm that did it, they specialize in these slabs. They said the new piping that they're running is generally giving a 50-year life. Some of that will come into the construction, because if we remain with headers or we replace headers or how we plumb everything in together will have an impact on that. But they're saying the slab itself, with the way they're running piping now, gives you about a 50-year life.
Okay, thanks, Riley.
Sorry, Bruce, just to add to that, you make that's actually a very good point, because we put a brand new slab in that gives us a 50-year life. Overall, we've been putting a lot of money into that facility and bringing things current and doing a lot of maintenance things that were overdue. Eventually, I mean, this isn't going to stop. So when you look at, well, now our slab has a 50-year life. The next question will be, well, when do we replace the boards and the glass? When do we redo the insulation? When do we do cladding? The roofing program is already underway. And so even though we talk about 1.7 million or 1.4 for the 3.2-ish total, it does kind of build on each other. And, you know, a couple of years I'll be back and saying, okay, now we're ready to do the boards and here's another million or whatever it is. Not saying boards are $1 million, I don't know, but you get the idea in terms of this is an ongoing thing, and we are getting fairly deep into the hole in terms of renewing a lot of things in that facility.
Right. So it's not like this is it.
No, this is definitely not it.
This is the next big
Yeah.
it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Riley. I actually have a few questions about this program. And just, I guess, I'm just reflecting back to our August 10th council meeting where we were discussing the license for the curling club. I guess I was just a little bit confused. I'm just wondering why we didn't have a kind of a fruitful conversation in advance about the projects that would be eligible for this municipal stimulus project, because I know that the program materials were available July 28th, and I'm just kind of wondering why we didn't have a special meeting of council prior to August 10th to discuss which projects we felt, or am I mistaken? Like, and this is just my first of a couple questions, but did I doze off or something? Like, did we actually talk about the municipal stimulus project, like the 1.6?
No, we didn't. No, you're not missing anything. Like I said, there wasn't a lot we had that fit the bucket well in terms of the requirements of the funding. I think one of them was it couldn't be on the capital list within the next year. And when you start looking at that and what we needed to do and the certain amount of work we had to have ready, it really limited in terms of what we could do. Now the application has to be in by the end of the month. If there was something else that council wanted to look at, I mean, that's definitely something we could investigate and bring back in terms of, I think on the 28th, we still have one more council meeting. So that's doable, and we could look at applying for something else. But this is what we thought was a good fit, and this is what we brought to the meeting.
And I'm fine with it, because I think it's like we mentioned before, that when we keep pushing things off the budget, like I just was querying about the process, that's all, because I just wondered.
No,
like,
fair
I
enough.
didn't really think I dozed off, so.
To be honest, we didn't have a lot of time internally to get this ready and turn it around. So it was a quick turnaround just to get it to this meeting in terms of pulling all our numbers and reports and whatnot together. So this wasn't something we had, you know, even middle of the summer, we didn't even know this was coming, and this wasn't planned, and this was still not imminent on the capital. So it was a quick turnaround for everybody.
Right, perfect. And so another one of my questions is, one of the objectives of this project is to sustain and create local jobs. So just as a comment, I'm sure hoping that when this goes out to tender, that Alberta-based companies will be, because that's part of the whole MSP program, that's what they're hoping is for local. And I am going to reference though page 97. I'm confused about the funding here, because it says, so the fund itself will provide up to 1.67 million in funds. And for slab replacement, okay, it's estimated we'll need an additional funding of 1.5 million, call it. So the small arena and the curling rink have to be done together, as you mentioned, because they share the same refrigeration system. But lower down on the page, it says that the total cost approximately for both of these are the 1.77, and that's a difference of almost 100,000. But it's been taken off of the total for the large arena, that 100,000, which in the body of the financials chart says the large arena is 1.4, but above says 1.5. I guess I'm just wondering, where is this additional 99,651 coming from? Because it looks like you're just taking from one, like if you can just provide clarification, because that made no financial sense to me, unless I'm confused. Like, I hope my question's clear, but I just was wondering why it's being pulled.
Sorry, Carol, you mean, so if we go to the financial summary,
Yeah, you see on page 97 where it's financial, and you've got large arena as 1.4.
yeah,
But then above, I'm just trying to think what page it's at, above in the body, it says it's going to be 1.499. So the third line underneath financial. And then it's like you're taking 99,000 from, like, do you see kind of what I'm getting at is, let me just see if I can explain it better. And see, so 1.67 and then additional funding in the amount of 1.499.
yes.
But then see, it says down at the bottom in the actual numbers, large arena 1.4. So are you taking 99,651 from the budget of the large arena?
So the 1.
Go ahead, Riley.
So the 1.499 would be if we were to proceed with both projects for the 3.17, and you subtract away your grant, you would need additional funding, which we do not have currently allocated, of the 1.499.
The 1.499. I guess I'm just wondering, where's this 100,000? I guess I just need it in my head. Where's this 100,000?
The 1.499 plus the grant equals the 3.17, which is the total cost of everything.
Okay.
That's not in addition to one of the projects, it's in addition to the grant. So the difference, what you're seeing is the difference between what the small and curling would cost versus the cost of, or versus what the grant would provide. So that 100,000, if you took the grant and you said we're doing the small rink and the curling, you're still 100,000 short based on our current estimates.
So that's my question. Where's that money coming from?
So we don't know yet. What would happen is we would get the grant funding, we would do the engineering, we would get a better estimate, and then we would come back to council and say, hey, we've done the engineering, we've refined the estimate, here is the actual, or what our current predicted cost is. And then we would go if we still needed funding or not. So if we needed funding at that point, there would be a request to council saying, we need this additional funding. It would come from this source and council would have to approve it at that point. And then we would go out for tender and do our thing.
So potentially we could easily be well over this 100,000, like, right?
I wouldn't say easily. I would hope we're closer than that. I would hope we're under that, to be honest.
Well, me too, but I'm just kind of wondering, because it's just a case of so many pots, like this is the stuff that just makes my head scramble. But
to be honest, the big risk, like the engineer will be able to give us better pricing on what concrete and piping and costs like that are, but there's always going to be a risk. And what my first question to the engineer would be in terms of, well, how do we minimize the risk with what's under the slab? And so that will always be the concern. And they're probably going to say, well, until you cut it up, and we don't want to, the problem is to drill a hole in it. You can't drill a hole in the slab to see what's underneath it because of all the pipes running through it. And so until you're actually ready to pull out that slab, you're not going to know. And so do you shorten the season so you can get in there and cut these holes and do some drill logs or something ahead of time? Or do you let the season go for the full duration and take the risk knowing that you might be running into a geotech issue underneath that slab? There's definitely some uncertainty there, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle it yet. And I'm sure this isn't a unique situation for someone who does these on a regular basis. So that will be kind of what we need to work through before we come back to council.
Okay.
Does
And
that help,
thanks, and
Carol? I haven't really answered your question because we don't know if we
no,
need
you
the
didn't
money for
really,
sure
but that's
yet.
okay. No, I understand. And thank you for answering the fact that it, clearing my mind that this hadn't been a thorough discussion. And I do support the fact that the curling club, they require this. I always worry about things going over and over budget and just wondering where it's going to come from. That's all.
So this is different. So historically with something like this, we've taken numbers like this that are not the most dialed in. I mean, it's based, you've seen the assessments. They've applied a fairly generic unit rate, I assume, to get these rates. Nothing that's site specific. It's just kind of in their experience on a square footage basis, it roughly costs this. We had some back and forth with BST in terms of, well, what about this and what about that? Is this included? Is this not included? And then we've made some adjustments as we saw fit. So in the financial section, you can see where we've made adjustments. So we have under the retrofit slab is the original costing from BST. They've raised the concern around the geotech, and they've given us basically their best guess without knowing anything. We've added on some engineering and some contingency based on that. They already had a little bit of contingency based within that retro slab. Our concern is that once you're doing the slab, you're going to say, well, what if you run into an issue with a foundation or a Zamboni door or a wall or something like that that we haven't thought through. And so there could still be flexibility, or I guess there is some uncertainty around this number. And historically, we have asked for these numbers based on these uncertainties up front. And so this time we're looking at it a little bit different, saying, well, hey, let's go do some design. Let's try and dial these numbers in a little bit better so everyone has a little bit more confidence when we do actually ask for budget funds. And so that was the approach taken on here. Right now, what we want to do is get the engineering done so we can actually answer some of those questions a little bit better. Does that help, Carol?
Actually, that really does. Thanks for summarizing it.
And Carol, I think that's valid, your questions. And that's why I'm leaning towards, let's focus on what absolutely, like where the actual problem area is, because we all know when we tear up a street, even, and those are easy things to figure out. You start doing renos on well, everybody that's done a reno on a house, welcome to the flood, right? You can this costs can spiral out of control, and you start digging up that large ice surface, and yeah, over the long span, okay, cost more to do them separately, but you get in a train wreck somewhere along the way, and the building was built in '79. I don't know, I'm nervous about taking all three on. I'm very nervous about doing that. Councillor Nychuk was next.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. You kind of where I was going. You had mentioned early on in the conversation about taking on the most critical piece here, and that's the curling rink and the small ice surface. I guess in terms of this application, Riley, and the funding that's available, the 1.77 already exceeds the amount that that the stimulus program will provide up to. So were we including the large ice surface because you had a consultant come in and look at it to make sure we get the 1.67, or like are we making the amount more so that we trying to milk this as good as we can from the government? Or because I guess again, going where Craig was talking with efficiencies, I kind of get it and I kind of don't, because it's a massive project unto itself doing that large surface and the other two pieces. So if we had a company come in this year and do the curling rink and the small ice surface, and they came a year or two later and did the other one, yeah, I get equipment and people and that kind of stuff, but I don't know, really, are we going to save that much money by putting them together and then trying to search for another 1.45 million in the budget to do them all at once? Long and short of it is I support what Mark Snodgrass was saying. Let's go with the critical piece first and go that route.
So I can answer that. There are some efficiencies, but you're right, it's probably in terms of the overall cost of the project fairly minimal. Having to go through, if you separate them, now you're doing 2 RFP for engineers, you're doing 2 tenders, your supervision for the project's going to increase. So there's definitely some cost separating them, but it's not huge. To your first point, that was some of the consideration, because if we open this up, and maybe we're a little too optimistic, if we open this up and there's no geotech issue, if they say, well, it's not that bad, it's just settled from all the water, and in terms of a material, if you replace it and repack it in, it's not that bad. We could be leaving money on the table. How much? Probably not a huge amount. So is it worth it in terms of trying to do both? On the flip side, there is risk as well in terms of doing both, because if you run into issues and you've displaced all those user groups, at least if you're only doing one at a time, what challenges you find on the one, you can expect to find on the other, and you can then properly plan for it. So if there's a geotech issue with the first, we'll understand what that's likely going to look for the second, and we can better prepare for it. And in the meantime, we have less inconvenience for our user groups as well. And so either way, there's pros and cons. I don't think there's any right answer on this one, to be honest. And separating them is definitely a very reasonable approach in terms of tackling the project.
Thanks, Riley. Or do you apply for the whole amount, and then can you scale back the project after the application? Could you go for all 3 pieces, and then you come back and you go, oh no, we're only going to decide we're going to do the 2 once you see what the total funding allotment is?
We haven't got that far yet, to be honest. I haven't asked that question yet.
I know that's playing a bit of cat and mouse, but anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hasn't the GOA already said, our river's getting this much money? Like they've already.
Yes, but we still have to meet their funding requirements to get it.
No, blah, blah. Councillor Moore. Thanks, Riley.
Thank you. A couple of things. We already addressed that we needed this for the curling rink. We already said we were going to do that, and that was before we ever thought that we were going to get a grant or anything. So putting this project on where we get some money for it is great. And I don't think that you have to expand, like everybody said, to the large iSerps at this point. The real need right now is curling rink. And if you did the 2 at the same time, that's great. But we already have established that the municipal stimulus program is already said that you're getting this much money. You just have to justify it. So when we make our application for that, I guess I'm saying also that the cost of replacing the pad is not sufficient in that budget, because there is going to be geotech additional cost for sure. That's the reason that we're replacing that pad in the curling rink, because there is an issue with underneath. So you can be pretty well certain that you're going to run into an extra cost there. it's probably going to cost for replacing that slab more than the 1.7 million cost. And but at least we've got 1.6 million to apply to that project, whereas before, when we said we'd like to go ahead with it, we didn't have anything to go toward it, and we were going to pay the whole cost. So it's a no-brainer. We should just put this towards that project and proceed with it.
This is what the whole program's all about, is getting jobs done and people back to work and moving and everything. And we might get a, like you say, Don, yeah, absolutely. Is it going to be coming in at 1.7? No, it might come in at 2 million, but we just got a $2 million job for 400 grand. It doesn't take a lot of thinking to nod your head on this one, in my mind. So I don't have any further questions. So I will ask Councillor Masterman for a motion that council authorized the submission of a municipal stimulus program capital project application in the amount of $1,670,349 for the replacement of slabs in the curling rink and the small arena at the Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex. And upon provincial approval of the grant application, council direct administration to commence design work for the slab replacement in the two ice surfaces at the Bob Snodgrass Rec Complex, and further the mayor and chief administration officer are authorized to execute the MSP program memorandum of agreement with Her Majesty the Queen for MSP grant funding. Councillor Matt.
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Just so that everybody is very clear, when they vote, you will hopefully notice that I left out the large arena. Wants to add it back in, you're more than welcome to make it.
Mayor Snodgrass.
McMillan, go ahead.
Sorry to, I did actually have one quick question about this. Is part of the protocol is the submission of red tape reports, and I was just going to ask, are they going to be presented to council prior to the February 1st, 2021 and February 2022 requirements dates?
Riley, help.
No help, Craig. I don't know that for sure. If it's a requirement, I know there's a requirement in the grant to reduce red tape. We've had some discussions of what that would look like. This project doesn't necessarily lend itself to doing that. But overall, there could be, it seems to be more general than that. It doesn't have to be terribly specific. So
I just wondered if we'd see, because when I was reading it, I read the whole thing, big shock, I know, but about the, you know, the requirements, and it did say that reports, there's 2 reports required, one February 1st, 2021 and February 2022, to demonstrate that each municipality is indeed utilizing red tape reduction policies. So I just kind of thought that would be kind of nice to see as council, because who knows, it might be innovative or something, and High River might be a leader in red tape reduction. I don't know, but I just kind of wanted to bring that to note, that would we be seeing that? Oh, I guess we have to. There's.
yeah, if you have, yeah.
Well, I haven't seen the GOA pull it off yet, so we might struggle. Anyways.
Well, actually, that's why I thought we could be a leader,
dream, guys.
Craig. Yeah.
There's a reason why a lot of that stuff exists, and yes, it frustrates people, but I think it's, you know, been through that when we were first elected. We wanted to get rid of all this, but you find out real quick why a lot of those red tape rules exist. It's because people will screw you if you don't have them. So you got to be very, very careful with that, and you make sure that the project, but you know, absolutely, if there's a way we can do that and find efficiencies and everything else, make things easier, we're all over it. So No further questions, so I'll ask for the vote. All in favor with Councillor Masterman's motion by consensus. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Excellent discussion. Center Street Bridge, Highwood River, Handrail. Riley, take it. Krista.
Krista's up.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about the High River Center Street Bridge handrail extension and refurbishment. We have put it out for contract award currently. As we know, the existing handrails on the Center Street Bridge are in poor visual condition, and extensions are required to bring it up to current bridge code for cyclist traffic. Initially, it was believed that the handrail replacement would be cost-effective, so completely replacing the handrails. Upon further detailed design, it was determined that a complete replacement of the rails resulted in additional upgrades being required and an increased cost when compared to handrail refurbishment. There was additional work that was scoped for the Highwood River Center Street Project Bridge within the approved budget that included the steel girders, maintenance and bearing replacement or refurbishment. Construction work pertaining to the girders and bearings would require the use of a barge in the Highwood River to access the areas. This triggered the need for the navigable waters application and approval. We didn't actually receive that until late July. So the decision had to be made mid-July to proceed with doing the procurement documents in order to do even a portion of the project, which was just the handrail painting and then the extension that could occur in 2020. We received one bid from CB Inc. I apologize if I'm pronouncing the company name wrong, in the amount of $237,843.30. This excluded GST and contingency. The bid also included some work for heat straightening of the cover plates on the sidewalk. It's basically there's just a plate there that's covering the gap and it's bent up a bit, which is a tripping hazard. So we were looking at fixing that while we were out there because it fit well with the project, and then painting the exterior traffic barrier as well. Or the interior traffic barrier. The ISL engineering completed a review of the bid, and the bid was comparable to the current industry prices. The pricing received for the project was over the approved budget allocated for the painting of handrails and extension within the original $350,000 that was allocated for the total project. Although the pricing was within a reasonable estimate of flexibility when it comes to construction estimates, there are still a couple of options that could be considered by council that include awarding the construction contract to CB Inc. Or an alternative consideration would be to defer the handrail refurbishment till spring 2021. Although the pricing received for the handrail refurbishment was competitive for the current industry, administration believes that there's an opportunity to retender the complete project. So that would include the handrail refurbishment, the girder maintenance, and bearing replacements in early 2021, with the possibility of attracting more interest because it will be a larger project, so there might be more competition out there. It could improve pricing, and it would eliminate the need for two mobilization costs that would occur with doing it in two separate years. I'd like to open it up to any questions in regards to this project.
Thanks, Krista. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Krista, when we talked about this before, we talked about sandblasting and having to get approval of doing it over the water. Has that gone by the wayside that we don't need approval for sandblasting for the painting?
So the handrails will all be removed and temporary barriers will be put up, and they'll be taken off and put into an enclosed shop and completely redone. That'll allow, I don't know the full process, I don't understand the specifics of it, but it creates a better, the paint adheres better. So it'll be a better end product for us.
Okay.
The sandblasting will be for the girders underneath. So because we can't take the girders off, those will have to be in place, and that's what we needed nav water's approval because the barge has to go into the water in order to access them.
So the navigable
I know.
waters thing was approved already. So
Yeah.
we can do that. We can do that sandblasting. Okay, so what would be the cost of doing that phase 2 of this project?
So I do have a number, but it includes a bit of we were looking at doing a maintenance program for the surface of the bridge as well. Instead of doing a full bridge replacement for the surface, we were going to do it as a maintenance program. So it includes that. So it's not going to be reflective of just the additional scope. So it was 460,000 for all of the girders, the bearing refurbishment, because bearing refurbishment gives us the same end result and the same condition and life of the bridge. It helps with that, but we're also looking at the bridge deck maintenance program.
So if you add that to the cost of painting the bridge barrier, bridge fence, it's going to be way over the 350,000 budget.
Yes, yeah.
So how can we be so far off in our estimates? That's the first question. The second is, why are we only getting one bid for a lot of our projects lately?
So it will be over the 350 for sure. Because we are adding in some additional scope in there with the bridge deck as well. But we were going to be hitting that limit of 350 with just the railings. Once you consider like the 10% contingency in there and then the engineering fees, we're getting close to that 350. The only, I guess, part that's in the engineering fees, it's kind of like an overlap between like, if we were to go forward with this 2020 project and the 2021, is some of the engineering fees won't be there because we've done the nav waters approval process, and that some of that will carry over into 2021. So we'll have a little bit of cost savings there, but overall the project would be higher. When the estimates were done for the railings themselves, it was done in 2017. I don't know the specifics of how the industry, like that industry has gone, but I do know that there's a lot of bridge maintenance that is currently happening within the province due to the aging infrastructure. So I don't know if it's because there's a more demand, so the cost is going up, or all the specifics as to what's impacting that cost, but it is a bit higher. It is higher than we had initially expected when we came to the budget.
Yeah, a lot, like double. So the other question was, why are we not getting bids for our tenders? We're supposed to get a minimum of 3 to evaluate.
Yeah, so I know with the railings, it's a very specific industry for doing the railings themselves. So if we were to put out the full scope of the project with all of the other pieces, odds are CB would come in as like a sub-consultant of the overall project. They wouldn't be the main one. So it is limited the amount of contractors that are available to do the railing specific work. So that probably had an impact on it. And we came in later in the season for this bid because we were waiting for the nav waters to come in. We were hoping that we could do a bigger bid package.
So if we waited till 2021 and got the whole project scoped out, there's a good chance it may be less money for the project.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the overall picture of all of it, it could end up being, I can't say for sure, but I would suspect we would get better pricing. And we'd be able to tender earlier in the season, maybe in like February, and that would also give us a leg up too, because we're starting when people aren't super busy. They're still trying to fill their books for that construction season. So
good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Riley, you got your hand up. Is there something you want to fill in on that end? Or?
Yeah, I would please. So just to add to what Krista said is, as we've gone through the summer, we've seen that as a bit of a trend in terms of getting less and less bidders on work we're sending out. Some of that is, like Krista said, we're later in the season, so companies will have their bid book filled up. Earlier in the season, I think we were getting good pricing because everyone was worried about not having their project book filled. So not only have we seen less bids, but we've seen price escalation as well. So we did well on those ones we had out to bid early in the year, but as the summer has gone on, it hasn't been as favorable. So I think that some of that is just the conditions out there. Some of that is the stimulus money floating around out there. And some of it is just, as the season goes on, prices escalate. So a couple things that are not working in our favor on this one.
Thanks, Riley. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Krista. I'm along the lines of Councillor Moore, because when I was reading this, it seems like administration, like on page 3 of 5 or page 174, it sounds like even administration has the appetite to reconsider this for 2021. I guess I have a couple questions. One, is this absolutely essential to be done in 2020?
The handrail replacement isn't essential for this year.
Okay, so it's not like a safety concern or, okay.
No.
And it's just funny with these things, because I still think it's too bad that municipalities couldn't be a numbered company, so that when we do get quotes, that, because I do believe that the minute people know that it's a municipality, the numbers just seem to go way higher than like for a private industry. So it really is a shame that we couldn't just be a numbered company when we're getting these quotes, because I would be very curious about, because you see this across all municipalities versus private. So that's just Councillor McMillan's little rant about how I think the prices are jacked up the minute they know it's a municipality. But I guess what I would be saying for me is I'd be in favor of voting for the alternative about delaying this until 2021, so that we can actually, as you mentioned, Krista, get maybe, and Councillor Moore, get more bids, as well as it's not taking a job away from C, but as you said, they'd probably be a subcontractor. But I just think it would be more efficient to just delay this and get it all done properly.
And from like a procurement standpoint too, because we're changing the scope, we are able to re-put this out, and I put it as an RFP. So we have a little bit more flexibility with that.
That's good. Yes, definitely. Thanks, Krista.
Well said, Carol, because there's no question that that's exactly what happens with this stuff, especially when you've got programs like MSP out here, and all these guys, they just know government money floating around, they're going to get their digs in on it as much as they can. And then when you're doing projects late in the year, then there's extra cost to that as well. But municipal jobs. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor. But and I would concur with the previous statements, but I will point out, a month ago I bought a 2x4 and it cost me $3.25. I bought on the weekend 2x4s and they're $8.05. So some of the costs are going through the roof, and how they're justifying it, I have no idea. I know our company certainly can't double their prices and get away with it. My question is more about the actual construction. Will this cause the bridge to be closed for any length of time in doing this work?
There will be some closure, but it'll be a partial closure. They're gonna basically minimize it. How I asked them to do it was basically try to minimize the time that they would have the bridge closed, even partially, and kind of time it so that way it wasn't interfering with people trying to get to school and stuff like that. So try to take the non-peak hours and do the work then. They would just remove the rails and put up the temporary ones. The bridge would stay open for the whole duration. There just might be a partial closure that might have to occur just while they're working.
Okay, thank you, Krista. Appreciate it. Thanks.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Krista. Well, there's a motion on the table here's where I'm going. People help me with what you want to do. There's a motion on the floor for us to approve this project and the dollar amounts that are tied to it. But I'm also hearing a lot of conversations about deferring this until 2021. Kara, Chris, if we want to defer this till 2021, is there any point in reading any part of this motion?
Mayor Snodgrass, no, there's no point in reading the motion. It would be the direction to defer this to the budget 2021 discussion process and reworking the scope from that perspective. I would suggest as well that we do try and tender this before the end of the year if we possibly could, or get that into the roster of some companies, because they will have a busy 2021 already, talking with some engineers, and with the amount of money that's flowing out from the provincial government. It will be a busy construction season the way it's working out right now.
Sounds good. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Moore to defer the Highwood River Center Street Bridge Bearings Paint Project to the 2021 budget discussions.
Yes, could I add to that we do get the tenders out before the end of 2020?
Thank you. So it's all in. Motion on the floor from Councillor Moore. All in favor? Consensus? Carried. Thank you very much. FCSS, I saw Janelle fire up her camera, so.
Yep, I had to pop on there.
Oh,
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about the Family and Community Support Services information booth item before you this afternoon. Just for a little bit of reference, the Family and Community Support Services Board has provided a community voice by being the eyes and the ears for preventative social services for a number of years now. This robust board not only makes recommendations on funding allocations for the FCSS community grants that typically fund community agencies, but they also work in response to the things that they see and hear within the community. So one of these responses is the FCSS information booth. As you've seen in your package, this project resulted from an observation that High River residents might not always know about the resources within High River, or more specifically, some of the services that FCSS, also known as Family Community Support Services, provides. This project was meant to be twofold. So it looks to increase visibility for FCSS and the services they offer, as well as it provides residents with actual tangible information that they might not otherwise have access to, especially if they don't have access to that technology. The FCSS board pursued this idea. They managed to build this booth at zero cost through the generous material and labor donations that were provided by Dream Developments, Wagner Homes, and Acron Roofing. So the booth has been constructed, and two sides of the booth will house more static information about FCSS. So that includes location, hours of operation, maybe some statistics relevant to High River. But the other two sides will provide accessible information about food, housing, clothing, and other social support resources. So this might be in the forms of applications, pamphlets, even perhaps some handouts. The FCSS information booth will provide information to residents in a more traditional format, and this actually offers an alternative to web or technology-based resources. And that actually makes it accessible to all residents. The location itself was also very intentional, as it provides a lot of seating in that area. It's quite a beautiful space. It's very visible, and it's close access to other support services. So if you take a look at First and Third, they're really in quite close proximity to the food bank, the thrift store, other social profit agencies, and I counted, FCSS is actually only 8 blocks from that location. So the recommendation in front of Council today is that Council approve the installation of the Family and Community Support Services information booth on Town of High River property at the corner of 3rd Avenue and 1st Street Southwest. Are there any questions from Mayor and Council?
Thanks, Janelle. Well done. Councillor Masterman, they're all popping up.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So just really quickly, Janelle, thanks for the presentation. Very exciting, especially since it costs us absolutely zip. But it's a great community initiative for sure. I just had one quick question and a very quick point. Where exactly on that intersection, and I apologize if it says it, which corner at 3rd and 1st is it?
Oh, in the middle of the road intersection. That's okay, right? The 4-way? I'm teasing. So we actually have a number of planters.
I didn't think you were teasing.
I wouldn't do that to you. So there's actually quite a lovely seating area. Hey now. And so we'd have to make some arrangements with regards to moving the planters and the benches to make it more accessible in that space, but we would obviously work to make it look quite nice. So it's just a little bit off the road, tucked in there.
So but the southeast corner.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yep. And I appreciate that yes, this is an antiquated way of doing things, but I would really hope that we message it and Facebook it and social media, because there are, as you pointed out in your presentation, there are a number of people who just aren't aware of these things, and so the more that we can do to as council members as well, and the town can do to let this be known what this is all about. And my final point was, I was a little unclear on whether it will be manned by board members, possibly volunteers. And pardon me if you touched on that and I just missed it.
It will be managed by FCSS board members. Should the board dissolve at any point here into the future, FCS staff will take over and make sure that it's well managed and maintained. And I do want to say that it is really important to acknowledge that this was certainly not a project that I was involved in. There was a number of FCSS board members that were instrumental in making it happen. And so not only do we want to bring awareness to the booth itself, but also a thank you to the FCSS board, to Shelley Coote, as well as those sponsors that I mentioned, Dream Developments, Wagner Homes, and Akron Roofing.
Okay, and my apologies for the use of the gender-specific manned instead of managed. That's unlike me to make that mistake, so thanks.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you, Janelle. How big is it? I can see the pictures, but I have no relationship. Is it like 6 feet tall or more?
It's about 6 feet tall. I might be a little bit inaccurate with that measurement because when I did go to look at it, it was on a trailer. But if you're familiar with the museum booth that looks very similar to this one, it is approximately the same size.
Okay, is it strong enough to support a clock? Just kidding. I'm just going with Hank's clock project that was going in the same place.
So we did double check with Hank and Rotary to ensure that we weren't taking over the space for a different project. And should that project come to fruition at any time in the future, we will look to relocate the information booth.
It'd probably be best to bolt it down to the sidewalk or to the foundation there, because it could end up in the middle of the street on occasion.
Right, Bruce?
Yeah, your joke wasn't quite far off. The other thing that I was concerned about was vandalism of the structure and the materials in it. For many years, we had a caboose right beside the museum, not far from that spot, and that was a constant problem with vandalism there. But something that we'll have to. You may be missing a lot of materials out of there on occasion.
It's definitely something that will be monitored. Two of the sides that will maintain the FCSS information, those sides actually do lock. And then the other two sides do open like a door so that the wind won't pick anything up and scatter it away. Now, if vandalism does become a problem, then we'll certainly address that in the future, but we would hate to not see this information booth get placed for fear that it might be vandalized. We actually did have a chance to chat with the museum and ask about how their booth is managing, because as you know, it's just down the street. And they said thus far they haven't had any problems.
Great. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Councillor McMillan.
Actually, Councillor Cooey was before me.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Councillor McMillan and Mayor Snodgrass. Not a question, just to reiterate what Janelle had said. A huge shout out to the FCSS committee. Jillian Groper, who at the time was our chair, was a dog at the bone. They saw a need for this and a real desire to fulfill it. And really, it is a true community project. And again, just a shout out to Jillian and to Shelley and to the other members of the FCSS board for making this reality, along with our community members. You know, nobody questioned stepping up and help. First question we asked each of those community members and businesses, they said yes. So thanks to everyone involved. It's good to see it finally in place. It has been sitting in Wagner Holmes's lot for the past year almost. So nice to see it getting used finally.
You're on mute, Craig.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get my video back going. There we go. There's the big one. Go ahead, Councillor McMillan. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you very much, Mayor Snodgrass. And thank you very much, Janelle. And to reiterate everyone else's comments, what a spectacular board project. Like, these are the things that really, really just pump me up. Community spirit is amazing. And that's just so wonderful. My question is, just to confirm, so this is on the side, the same side as community savings, correct? Yeah.
So the same side of the street, my apologies, I don't know where community savings is. Same side of the street as the museum.
Okay. So it will be put far enough away from the intersection to not cause any visibility issues, correct?
Yes. And when you do have a chance to look at the corner of 3rd and 1st, it actually is quite a large space, and the information booth will likely be tucked into the back corner so as not to impede any traffic. It will certainly be far enough from the street that it won't be an issue.
Perfect, because that is a great location, because I'm always walking and that's a popular spot with pedestrians as well. I just wanted to make sure that it was far enough back, because even if I'm hopeful that it will be really used, and I don't want any pedestrians like accidentally stepping back into traffic or whatever, because that can be a chaotic corner at the best of times. But well done, and exactly what Kathy said, great job with the Jellies team and the volunteers, so thank you.
No further questions, so I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that Council approve the installation of the Family and Community Support Services Information Booth on Town of High River property at the corner of 3rd Ave and 1st Street Southwest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd gladly make that motion.
All in favor? Consensus? Carried. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you very much.
Item 8.5, who's speaking to this one?
So there's not a specific recommendation coming forward from administration in relation to the criminal code letter. On the August 10th, as part of that meeting, that council meeting, a member of council, Councillor McMillan, had asked for this to come back to this meeting. So we're just bringing it back so council can have a full discussion on this topic.
Okay, so maybe I'll pass it over to Councillor McMillan to speak to this.
Okay, thank you very much. When we received this as part of our correspondence, it actually resonated quite well with me because I thought the mayor of Cold Lake and their council crafted a really well articulated letter regarding the order in council motion about the gun ban. And to me, I thought, you know, if they took the time to craft this letter after having fruitful discussions within their council, and they sent it to all municipalities, I just thought it would be beneficial to offer support. I don't know if it's a case of just sending them a letter saying, yes, we support, or do we craft our own letter? I guess if we want to get more into the meat of the issue, I'd be interested in fellow council's opinions, of course, about this. But I just thought, you know, when municipalities take the time to, you know, advocate against something or, you know, or for something. So I'd like a council discussion about this, please.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Councillor Masterman.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and Councillor McMillan. I appreciate your thoughts on this. I think a little differently. I think just because a council has decided to write a letter like this that is actually about a federal issue, not a local issue, and that pretty much parrots the crowd that is totally against this legislation. I can't vote in favor of us writing a letter. As a hunter and a gun owner, I don't want to own rocket launchers. I don't want to own assault rifles. I don't want the right to own them, and I don't think anybody else should have the right to own them. And by agreeing to this, we're basically saying it's okay because rocket launchers and assault style rifles and other firearms are among the 1,500 firearms that are up to be banned by this legislation. And I certainly don't support everything that the federal Liberals do, but I do support this. Rocket launchers, assault rifles don't belong in any hands, criminal or legitimate. So that's just, it's a personal opinion, and we all have our opinions, and you know, certainly, well, that's all I'm going to say for now. Thanks.
Back to Carol.
Thank you. I'm just going to get their letter. I think where I'm coming from is the principle of this. I don't think this bill is going to stop criminals who want to do crimes. And the criminals who have the prohibited weapons to begin with will use them, whether the federal government is saying you can't or not. I think the issue, what resonated with me, and I don't own a gun, but I sure like my personal freedoms. And I think that that bill is penalizing lawful gun owners who aren't owning rocket launchers, but might have these. And when you look at the financial amount of money with this buyback program, and I think the thing that gets me is registered gun owners have less rights than criminals. Like when you think that even when a registered gun owner dies, the RCMP right away, you know, they know and they track, and lawful gun owners are lawful. So I just feel that I don't think this is going to prohibit any extra crime. And I don't think by supporting this letter, we're saying, oh yeah, we're pro-assault weapons. I think we're pro-human rights. And I think the firearms community is well regulated, and I think, and there's been some very thoughtful petitions already. And I guess, you know what, whether we choose to or not, I admire Cold Lake for stepping into this, because you know what, we're all affected by federal issues. Just because we're on a municipality, we all pay federal taxes, and what's decided at the higher end of government, of course, affects all of us. So with all due respect, Councillor Masterman, I'm actually surprised you would say that, because you know what, it's like me saying, oh, that's my neighbor's issue, you know, like, no, we're all affected by what the federal government decides. So that's, I'll leave it at that for now, but that's just where I'm coming from.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Normally when it's a federal type issue that the municipalities do not agree with their legislation or whatever, they go through FCM to put forward a resolution, and then all of the municipalities can vote one way or another on it at that point. So that would have been the preferred channel for them to do, instead of having municipalities from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba write individual letters on it. So that, I just think it may be a good point, and they may be very passionate about this, but they've got the wrong avenues.
Carol?
I was under the impression that because this was, I thought because FCM was on there, that this is a resolution that they're putting forward. That was my understanding. And I guess it was more the fact that even just to, well, I guess it was going through FCM, valid point. I guess also it just brought up interesting conversation, but.
This thing's a monster.
Mm-hmm.
The gun issue is an absolute monster, and it's I personally I don't want anything to do with it, with the town of High River, other than voting on an FCM. You know, if that's where we're at with it. I respect both Carol and Bruce, very different opinions on the thing, and I'm somewhere in between probably. But the gun thing is a monster, and I'm just totally happy that that's a Trudeau knock your socks off if you wanted to bite it off, and you can continue on. So you know, it wouldn't take 2 seconds to support this letter and be done with it if we wanted to, but I just rather have it nowhere near on our books. I just, as soon as you do something, you're going to pick a side and we're in, right? Like that's.
And that's fair enough.
It's a rabbit hole that I don't have time for. We got to focus on us. Sorry.
I know. And I appreciate the time spent. I just have to say that it's when things like this happen, just the fact that it was, I just feel it's almost like the country was a little bit blindsided, because to take something like, I agree, we shouldn't be discussing at this level. And we wouldn't be if that special order in council hadn't happened, where he took away the right of Parliament to actually have a fruitful discussion and a debate and a proper vote within Parliament with the people that we elect. Like, you know, that's, and I know I'm an idealist, but I just don't like how it was handled. And I think that's why, obviously, that's why these letters are coming in, the petitions. But I appreciate everyone's time, so thank you.
Well, we're learning a lot about the way that human being operates out there, and I think this isn't the only one that he runs around sneaky with, right? He's chicken with it. I'll end that there. It's weak. Okay, we'll move on. There's no motion or anything. Thanks very much, Carol, for bringing it up, and we discussed it and we know where we're at.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Heritage Inn Hot Air Balloon Festival letter of support. There's no need to speak about this. We know what it is. We know what we're doing. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor, where's my list? Councillor Cooey. The council authorized the mayor to sign the attached letter of support in relation to the Heritage Inn Hot Air Balloon Festival.
I will happily give you that motion.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Consensus? Carried. Correspondence requiring action, the High River Library sign girder use. So Kathy might want to speak to this a little bit more, but the Coles notes of it is the library board wants to put up some kind of sign out in front of the library, and they're asking for use of the piece of the old train bridge that we have. Neat idea. I'd like to see more about what Jim's, before we say yes or no, I'd like to see more about what his plan is, because it's not just a chunk, a straight I-beam or something, right, that you can saw off 2 feet and then here you go. It's one of the big X braces. Just like a little bit different, and whether council has, you know, do we want to be saving the majority of it for some future thing that we've got up our sleeve? But at this point in time, the library is the only one at the table that's requesting use of this. So, Kathy, I'm going to let you speak to, you know, a little bit more about it.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, they're trying to make, the library wants to create like an LED sign out front of the library, and they thought maybe to tie in this piece of girder, kind of bridging the community, that sort of idea behind it, and be able to use a portion of it. I'm not sure that, I didn't realize that it was the cross until Chris had attached the pictures. I wasn't sure what the piece looked like. And I'm not sure that that Jim did, but I think you're right. I think we need to understand more what they were thinking. Personally, I think if the town's going to do something with that girder, I would like to see it closer to its location, maybe something commemorating 2013 or the railway that was so crucial to our community. I just think that little piece of history could be maybe better utilized elsewhere. That's my personal opinion. But on the other hand, you're right. We need to consider the library's request. And if nothing else, this will maybe get us discussing what we're going to do with that piece rather than have it sitting in storage like some other historical things that we have discussed recently.
Yeah, I don't know that Jim even knows what this thing looks like, because it would be difficult, I think, to incorporate into a sign, but unless you started to hack it into pieces, right? And then I think it might lose its, starts to lose
it would make for a pretty large LED sign if you had to cover the spans of those girders.
Exactly. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just to reiterate what you said, I'd just like to see the design. I mean, it's sitting in a field right now, just rusting away. So if we have an organization in the community that is, you know, community centered, I see no reason why not letting them explore the opportunity to use it. Although, you know, Councillor Cooey, I agree that, you know, maybe there could be a more prominent spot, but we are not the size of Calgary, and we really promote getting around in our community to have a look around. So if it was closer to where the original bridge was, great, but it's not that far off, and we really promote people getting around in town. So if they had a really cool idea and could utilize it, all the more power to them. But I'd like to see something, some concepts anyway. Thanks.
Councillor Massman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that, you know, we had talked about maybe using that piece as a some kind of commemoration project to 2013, and there's nothing to say that if the library does it properly and comes up with a plan that we like, that couldn't actually be the commemoration as well. You know, certainly the library was impacted by 2013 as well. It's a learning center for High River. So, you know, would I prefer to have it near where the old bridge was, probably, but if they came up with an idea of, we also, I also, some years ago had mentioned the possibility of using it as a centerpiece in one of the roundabouts, which probably just makes people's heads explode. The idea of this thing being in a roundabout is just that so many towns have come up with creative centerpieces for their roundabouts, and but maybe we don't want something that people might run across the street in front of cars to look at closer. So, but yeah, I look forward to seeing, what Jim and the board is really thinking about here.
Councillor Moore.
Yeah, and thank you. I just don't see that anybody is really going to see the significance of the piece that we saw in the photograph, the girder. We're not going to relate that that's where it's from or anything unless there's some kind of indication in the signage itself. So otherwise it looks like a piece of metal. And I'm not sure that unless they have a good design for it that's going to actually show the use of railroad spike. Yeah, so that would be interesting to see in the actual design, if anybody will even notice that that's what it is.
Okay, so we'll look for more information coming back from Jim once he sees what it looks like and what their ideas are, and we'll go from there. Sorry, Councillor McMillan.
Oh, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. A question to Councillor Cooey. Have they purchased the LED sign yet?
No, they have not.
Do you have any idea how large that's going to be?
I don't know. I know. We've never talked about dimensions. All we've ever talked about is price, and they are incredibly expensive. This has been a project kind of in the works for a couple of years now, but I've never heard dimensions.
And do you know,
I'm going to say, sorry, I'm going to say similar, maybe a little bit larger to what is at the Highwood Center.
Okay, and do you know what angle this is going to be on? Like, is it going to, I'm presuming it's going to be facing down and up First Street, or is it going to be?
So you can see it coming from the north or the south.
Okay, because my only concern would be, but I would imagine they would, and I know this for future discussion, but they would probably have that, I'm hopeful, on a timer, because I know that we've had, as you were aware, lots of light complaints about the, for example, Senator Riley LED light, because those do give off a massive amount of light. So
yeah, and we have talked about that being an issue for sure, and that needs to occur.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I got more concerns about another LED sign than I do the girder, so.
Me too.
I'm not the biggest fan in the world in town with those things. So. No further hands, so last correspondence from the Highwood District Health Trust. That's there for your reading, Carol. And I will call the meeting adjourned at 5:23 p.m. Thank you very much. Well done. Take care. Bye-bye.